Oh my gosh, it's hot. It's really hot in here. Not only is Neal Brown's seat hot, but there's a lot of heat coming off the bridges that Shane Lyons is burning as he leaves Morgantown as their former athletic director. Let's talk about it. What is up, college sports fans, fellow members of Mountaineer Nation? This is Coos, and welcome into another edition of Coos' Corner. Pull up a chair, sit back, relax, and let me serve you up another shot of top shelf college football content. On tap in this episode today, big time news coming out of Morgantown today. Shane Lyons just burnt some bridges, dropped some absolute bombshells in regards to his release as athletic director at West Virginia University. Said some scathing things about E. Gordon Gee, some scathing things about the athletic department and the university. Let's get into this now. This is a big deal. Now, what I'm going to talk about in this episode, I'm going to outline some of the important details of the interview. Then I'm going to give you my opinion. Did Shane Lyons hurt himself by doing this interview and opening up so much and being so transparent about what happened? Could he have actually hurt himself and his reputation? Did he harm WVU in any way? Or did he harm all of the above or none of the above? I'll let you know at the end. Before I do that, let's get into some of the highlights of the interview. Now, this interview was done by Hoppy Kercheval on his WV MetroNews talk line show that comes on at 10 a.m. every weekday. Hoppy was fortunate enough to get Shane in for this interview, and Shane was absolutely transparent. I could not believe how transparent Shane Lyons was in this interview. It actually blew me away, folks. So I'm going to leave a link to the interview in the description box, but I'm sure most of you can find it very easily at WV MetroNews. When Hoppy asked Shane the reasons that Gordon Gee gave him for firing him, he said it was basically all about football, and he knew that. He understood that. Football's 80% of the revenue. Football team's not been doing well, and they're under a lot of pressure right now, and he knows that. So it's about football, and that was, obviously we know that, right? But to get into more of the details of this, Hoppy asked him specifically, was it because of the contract extension you gave Neal Brown a couple of years ago? Now, Shane said that Gordon Gee, Dr. Gordon Gee, the president of WVU, who's the one who fired him, said that he didn't mention that specifically, but he knows that that's part of it, part of the reason. And he gave reasons as to why he gave that extension. The reasons he gave was, he said Coach Brown, he thought, had the program heading in the right direction. And Coach Brown was being sought after, he thought, by some other schools. And in order to keep Brown from leaving, he wanted to increase Brown's buyout if he left WVU to about $5 million. Well, to reciprocate, Brown and his agent wanted WVU to give something in return, and they wanted West Virginia to give him a guaranteed contract. So that's what West Virginia did. And he felt like at the time that was the right move for the university. Now, one thing that Lyons pointed out here, and I think this is important, Shane Lyons said he did not sign that extension for Brown in a vacuum. It wasn't just his decision. That decision got the stamp of approval of not only Gordon Gee, but of current interim AD and VP of Strategic Affairs, Rob Alsop, and I apologize if I got his title wrong, but I think that's his title, and also the chairman of the Board of Governors at West Virginia, David Alvarez. So everybody in a leadership position at WVU signed off on that contract extension. Shane Lyons said he feels like he's the scapegoat for that. Now, let's move on. Gee claimed that Lyons wasn't being aggressive enough when it comes to NIL. And according to Lyons, he was doing all he could do under the guidelines of Title IX. And he fears that if he crossed the line, that West Virginia could be at risk of getting in trouble. He claims that what Country Roads Trust is asking him to do will cross that line. And he says that what they're asking him to do is to help fundraise. They want the athletic department at West Virginia to help fundraise for Country Roads Trust and the NIL collective. And he claims that if they do that, they would potentially get in trouble for violating Title IX. So he refused to do it. Now, that whole Title IX piece worries me a little bit, folks, and here's why. This interview Shane Lyons just did is going to be seen by people all over the country. Shane Lyons is a very highly respected athletic director. Heck, he was just given the award by his peers just a year ago as Athletic Director of the Year. He chairs a lot of committees and is on a lot of committees nationally that govern college athletics. So he's very highly respected. And we all seen he got a job almost the exact same day or the day after he was fired. The Alabama reached out to him and is hiring him back there. We see how much they respect him. He's a very highly respected man in the industry. So what he says holds a lot of weight. And if he made this comment, does that now put West Virginia University's athletic department in the crosshairs by the NCAA or even the federal government? I'm worried about that, folks. Shane Lyons may have just opened a huge Pandora's box that could potentially cause West Virginia a lot of problems down the road. Now, another issue, he says that Gee brought up West Virginia's poor performance in the transfer portal. Now, Lyons claims that the transfer portal is not on him as the athletic director in his mind. That's on the coaches. But then he follows that up by talking about and bragging about how good the basketball team did in the transfer portal this past season. Well, that's a little bit talking out of both sides of your mouth there, Shane. I see what you're saying. But at the same time, if Huggins is doing good in the portal, you didn't hire Huggins. Neal Brown's not doing so good in the portal. You did hire Brown, and you wanted to give him that extension, and he's not doing well. That does kind of fall on you. So I don't think he gets off scot-free here. Yes, it's primarily on the coaches, but those coaches are under his watch and his leadership. So at the end of the day, he does play a role in that. So I disagreed with his statement on that, but he did say that the transfer portal was an issue that Gordon Gee brought up in their meeting. Now, when Shane Lyons was asked if he was surprised by the firing, he said absolutely. Now, he was given a tip a few days before the meeting with Gee. Someone called him up and said, hey, they're coming after your job. And he was like, why? Why my job? And then he got in the meeting with Gee, and Gee basically told him that we're going to make a change, and he was surprised by it. He didn't understand why he was being what he felt like was the scapegoat, and he used that term in the interview. And another thing that's telling and I think troubling about this whole situation is he says that just 2 weeks prior to this meeting with Gee where he got fired, Dr. Gee sends him a text message, says, hey, we're under a lot of pressure here, but there's nobody else I'd rather be in the foxhole with than you. And I'm paraphrasing that, but that's basically what Lyons said. So Gee gave him a vote of confidence just 2 weeks prior to that meeting where he fired him. So that's troublesome to me for the university, and I'll talk about that in a minute as well. Now, when it came to his evaluation of the football program, Hoppy Kercheval asked Shane Lyons, if you were still the AD, would you fire Neal Brown? And he said, no, I would not, because he says, I feel like Brown's got the program moving in the right direction. And listen to this, folks. He says he actually feels like you really can only count this as Neal Brown's second year. I was taken back by that. He's effectively in year 4 of his deal, of his tenure here. But Lyons said he looks at it more like year 2 because he says he felt like he was left with very little talent on the roster, very little depth. Then he had to deal with COVID, and plus, the implementation of NIL and the transfer portal, which is all brand new. He said he's really only judging Neal Brown like he's in year 2. Every team in the country had to deal with COVID. Every team in the country has to deal with NIL and the transfer portal, and they're all finding ways to get through it and survive it. And many of them are doing much better than West Virginia. I understand the argument about not having being left with a lot of talent, but at the same time, he's now in year 4. He's now playing with a lot of his recruits. And Brown also admitted in his own press conference not long ago that they missed on a lot of guys in the 2020 recruiting class. So who does that fall back on but Neal Brown? So I feel like Lyons is still being way too easy on Brown here by saying he wouldn't fire him and saying he's only in year 2 in his eyes. That year 2 comment is not what boosters and definitely not what fans want to hear when they see the struggles going on the football field right now. Who does this hurt? Does it hurt Shane Lyons? I think it absolutely hurts Shane Lyons, and here's why. Shane may have hurt himself here and his own reputation by being so candid and not taking the high road in this discussion and even doing the interview in the first place for that matter. And here's why I feel that way. If you're a president looking to hire a new athletic director and you see Shane Lyons as one of the candidates, you may go, my gosh, if something happens with this guy and things go south, he might tell everybody what happened and spill the beans and disclose everything. You don't want that. It's just like running a business. If you fire somebody, you usually make them sign a non-disclosure agreement when they leave because you don't want them telling everything that happened, because there could be some things that either cast a black shadow over the company, make people look negatively upon the company, whatever. Same thing here. Why would you want to hire a guy who just spilled the beans and told all the secrets? All right, and then number 2, did Shane Lyons hurt West Virginia University? I think he absolutely could have. Now, obviously time will tell. He could hurt West Virginia's chances of landing a really top-notch athletic director. If I'm an athletic director and I'm looking at this job and I hear Shane Lyons tell all this and I see how the president just gave the guy a vote of confidence 2 weeks before firing him out of the blue, it might make me second guess whether I want to work for that president or not and that university. And also, like I mentioned earlier, his comments about Title IX and NIL may have just put West Virginia squarely in the crosshairs of the NCAA governance boards and maybe even of the federal government. I don't know. I don't know how far that could go. But it's not a good look, in my opinion, for West Virginia. And what Gordon Gee, in my opinion, Gordon Gee and Rob Alsop need to do some damage control, and they need to do it ASAP. They've got to get out ahead of this and try to tell their side of the story here before this thing gets way too far out of hand. That's how I feel. Now, what I have a really hard time understanding is why did West Virginia not make Shane Lyons sign a non-disparagement agreement as part of his severance agreement? I mean, that's from what I've read and understand. I've read a couple articles on this. A really good one done by the guys at 24/7 Sports. That's part of most severance agreements is a non-disparagement agreement. They signed one with Bill Stewart when he was let go. That's where neither party talks about what happened. So nobody looks at anybody in a negative light, and everybody moves on with their day and their life. But apparently, West Virginia did not make Shane Lyons sign one of these, and that is not good and a very, very big misstep in their dealings with his firing. Huge misstep here, one that could potentially cost them a lot of money and potentially even get them in trouble at some point, okay? And may prevent them from hiring quality candidates to work in their department. And heck, could this even cost Gordon Gee his job? Who knows? I mean, this does not paint Gordon Gee in the best light. Matter of fact, Shane Lyons said, I'm still a West Virginian. Once a Mountaineer, always a Mountaineer. I'll always cheer for the Mountaineers. But he does have hard feelings toward Gordon Gee and towards Rob Alsop because he was also part of that meeting. He said it. Yes, there will be some bitterness and some hard feelings toward those individuals. Because he said I thought they were friends of mine, and then they basically stabbed him in the back. So this is not a good look. It's not a good look for the school, not a good look for the department, not a good look for the individuals involved. And I just hope some way, somehow, cooler heads will eventually prevail. Everybody can move on, and just West Virginia can get themselves a good new athletic director. Looks like now they're looking at the G5 ranks, a sitting athletic director in the G5 ranks. Maybe they can get somebody to come in, do a better job managing NIL legally, do a better job making coaching, hiring decisions, and contract decisions, and get our football program back on the right track. So I want to hear your thoughts in the comment section. What do you think about Shane Lyons' interview? Do you think it could harm West Virginia University? Or am I making too big a deal out of it? Do you think it can harm Shane Lyons and his reputation as a future AD somewhere? I want to hear your thoughts. Drop them in the comment section. Folks, right now, between now and December the 4th, you can get 15% off in my merch store. Click the link at the top of my description box to take advantage of this offer right now. If you want to support, another way you can support me financially is by hitting the join button right below this video. Become a member of my channel, take advantage of the perks there. There's two different levels. There's the Country Roads level member and the Mountaineer Maniac level member. Obviously, the Mountaineer Maniac level member has a few more perks. If you want to support me absolutely free, there's 4 ways you can do that, and it only takes you a second. You can like this video, which is that thumbs up button underneath. You can leave a comment, like I mentioned earlier. You can share this out with your friends who might like this kind of content. And last but not least, please subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet. All of that helps the YouTube algorithm and will help me get to my 5,000 subscriber goal, which I'm really trying hard to get to by the end of this year. Really, really tall task. Probably won't get there, but at least it's something I can shoot for, but I need your help to get there. Couz's Corner family, I really appreciate you tuning into this episode of Couz's Corner, and until the next one, Q Country Roads.